Okay, welcome to video 2 of issue 13 about merit pay and whether it's lost its meaning or not. So, with regards to merit pay, managers have to implement merit pay. What that means is if you're working for an organization, you don't get to decide whether you get an individual incentive called merit pay or not. Your manager has to look at your performance and judge, has this person earned the merit pay or not. And managers are human beings. We have biases as human beings. So managers might be biased towards certain people and against certain people. And this might cause frustration for people with regards to merit pay increases. So if I feel like my manager is biased against me and that's why I'm not getting my merit pay increase, this would cause frustration. So something that was actually designed to be an incentive and make me work harder might actually make me want to quit the organization altogether. And so it might backfire, right? Also, a lot of people just don't want to hurt another person's feelings, right? Managers are much the same. They don't want to upset any of their employees. And so unless there are checks and balances in place, managers often try to give everybody a good performance review. And so if managers are asked, hey, how did this employee do? And based on that, we have to give this person an individual incentive called merit pay or not, then managers are going to be like, oh, wow, this person's pay is linked to what I say. I don't want to say anything negative so that they get their pay taken away from them. So managers will tend to just be like, oh, yeah, everybody's great. This person's great. That person's great. And then the organization is stuck with footing the bill of increasing everybody's base salary through merit pay, right? And so this is an issue with how merit pay is being implemented right now. So if you, for example, decided you hate merit pay, this would be one of the reasons that merit pay is not being implemented well right now, because there are few checks and balances that can be used or that organizations even try to use with regards to making sure that a manager is not biased in their ratings. Um, Also, lastly, merit pay is has a correlation causation issue. What does this mean? Correlation causation is the idea that just because two variables are related to each other or correlated to each other, doesn't mean that one causes the other, right? So, for example, if the you can think of two variables as, let's say, a salesperson selling cars, right? Or car salesman or woman selling cars. Um, if the economy is good, they're probably going to sell a lot of cars. If the economy is crashing, they're probably not going to sell a lot of cars, right? So for us to think that somebody is or is not selling cars due to some internal ability to be a salesperson or not, rather than the economy, would be flawed in this case, right? So just because two things are correlated, for example, a person is or isn't selling cars, doesn't mean that one thing is causing the other. It doesn't mean that, for example, it is any reflection on the person's ability to sell cars in the first place. It might have something entirely nothing to do with them, outside of them, like the economy, that's causing them to sell cars or not, right? So correlation causation is an issue across lots of different things in the world. With regards to merit pay, uh, the way you want to think about merit pay and correlation causation as an issue is to think about the fact that lots of organizations look to the top dog in their organization to see what they're doing. So, for example, if you're a computer based company, you'll probably look at like Google or Facebook as benchmarking how to treat your employees. And that's what benchmarking is. It's a procedure where organizations compare their own practices against those of successful competitors. So if I'm trying to be the next Google or Facebook, I want to study what these top people are doing through pay surveys, through trade industry groups, through professional groups like the BLS, Bureau of Labor Statistics, Society of Human Resource Management, ONET, American Management Association. All of these allow me to understand how are the top people in my field paying their people. And if, let's say, I discover that Google and Facebook has a merit pay system, then maybe I get fixated on the idea that merit pay is the reason that these top computer programmers are choosing places like Google and Facebook, or pay itself is the reason that people are choosing Facebook or Google. This might not be the case, right? So my brother used to work with Facebook, and he told me that, a lot of people could probably get more money being in a startup because startups are trying to get the best talent and they'll pay you even more than you'd probably get paid at some of the top companies. But a lot of people choose to stay at some of the top companies like Google or Facebook because of not just the brand cachet associated with them, but also because they work on some of the most interesting problems and they are the leaders in their industry. And a lot of people want to work with the leading company in their industry, right? So, as an outside company, computer company, if I'm thinking that pay is what is leading people to work with these top companies, I might actually be completely wrong. Is there a correlation between high pay, including merit pay, and people who work in some of the top companies? Yes. But does that mean that is the reason these people are working for these top companies? Not necessarily. So, hopefully, that helps you understand that correlation is not the same thing as causation. Just because two things go together or are associated with each other doesn't mean that one causes the other. So, again, just because a certain salary structure exists in a high performing organization doesn't mean that it is the cause of that high performance. Some jobs are too complex to even determine what is the exact behavior that is producing this result. Okay, so what are some of the consequences of using merit pay? If you do decide that you do like the idea of merit pay, then what are some of the consequences? Well, obviously, salary increases over time. As we've said, cost to organization increases. Now, I want you to study this graph for a second and try and identify for yourself before I tell you what's interesting about this graph. So let's look at this graph, okay? This is a graph about how people were rated and their average pay increase was it 2% to 10%. Okay, so it's showing that the people who were the highest rated performers based on their performance measurement systems were given something like a 6% merit pay increase, right? The next highest rated people got about 4.5-5%, middle rated about 4%. Here is the interesting stuff. The low rated to even the lowest rated, people who didn't even meet what they were supposed to be doing in their jobs, they still got almost 2% increase. What's going on over here? Why do organizations give merit pay increases to everybody in the organization? Yes, different levels, but everybody in the organization. And if we were in class, this would be one of the questions I would have thrown out to you guys to try and guess the answer to. Maybe some of you have guessed it, and the reason for this is that these are actually cost of living increases. So organizations have to keep increasing people's salaries because cost of goods and prices and rent and mortgages keep going up, right? And so because of that, people have to make more money over time, and even a 2% increase in your salary is something that organizations have to keep giving people. So organizations sometimes think that, hey, if we call this 2% cost of living increase a merit pay increase, maybe it will motivate these people who are at the lowest level and say, hey, I made a 2% increase this year, but I can make up to a 6% increase next year if I just work a little harder. That's the logic why a lot of companies use this merit pay increase or call it a merit pay increase, whereas actually for the lowest rated employees, it's actually just a cost of living increase. Now, this has some consequences to it, unintended consequences. And some of the unintended consequences are the people who worked really hard to get that top dollar, that 6% increase, are going to look at some of the worst people in the organization and go, wow, I only made 4% more than this person did. Like, this person who was performing subpar is still getting a 2% increase. Yes, I'm getting more than them, but why are they getting anything? So this might create inequity or injustice feelings between people who really work hard in the organization and people who are slackers in the organization. So the consequences for using merit pay as the only way that your organization increases salary is that you will end up with long tenured low performers, and your best performers, your high performers, will be shorter tenured. Again, tenure is how long you stay with the organization. So essentially this is saying, going back to that earlier slide, that the people who are working really, really hard are probably going to feel upset that their getting a merit pay increase, but even the worst performers are getting a merit pay increase of something. So they will probably be like, this is an unfair system, and probably leave. So you'll probably have these people leaving because they feel like this is unfair, and you'll probably have these people staying for a really long time. So again, long tenured, which is people who stay for a long time, low performers, versus short tenured high performers. And we want the opposite, right? We want the best performers to stay for a long time and the low performers to quit. So if you use a merit pay increase as the only way to increase base pay in organizations, you might end up with this. Okay. A lot of people leave because they feel, like I said, it's unfair. Okay, so some of how employees judge whether they're being treated fairly or not depends on three different things. They judge fairness of their pay based on what employees in other organizations earn for doing the same job. So again, I was giving you my example as a professor. Let's say if I make $100,000 and I realize that all my colleagues that have a PhD like me, do the same job as me, make $200,000 or upwards in other organizations, then maybe I'm like, hey, I'm not getting paid fairly because I'm judging my pay based on what other people in other organizations do. Okay. The other way that we judge fairness is what we think that other employees holding different jobs within our organization earn for doing the same or different jobs. So for example, let's say I'm a associate professor at MSU, right? So there's assistant professor, which is people who are the newest in the organization, then associate professor after they get tenure, and once they make and then after the only promotion after that is full professor, right? So let's say I'm an associate professor, so I will tend to judge my salary and the fairness of it based on not just what I make and other associate professors make in other organizations, but also what associate professors make in the same organization, which is what point 3 is, what other employees think, what they think other employees in the organization earn for doing the same job as them. So the same job as me would be associate professor in management specifically, right? So what does another associate professor in management make? Is it same, similar than me, or is it very, very vastly different? That'll be one of the ways I judge whether I'm being paid fairly. And another one is, what do people who are different levels than me make for doing their job? So an assistant professor, for example, how much are they making? A full tenured professor, how much are they making? So the one below me, the one above me, how much are they making? And if it's a big difference, then I might feel like, okay, yes, this is fair. But if it's not that much of a difference, I'd be like, hey, this is not that fair. I am promoted over them, and they're either making more than me or as much as me. So let me explain why that happens. There's something called salary compression that happens over time, which means cost of living keeps going up over time. So salary expectations keep going up over time, right? So when I was hired 8 years ago, let's say $100,000, it's not the case, but let's say $100,000 was what was the going rate for a professor at the time. And so I was happy to get the job at that level. And then every year that going rate keeps increasing because, that's what happens with salary over time. People's expectations go up, even if they're new. So let's say the year after I was hired, another new professor was hired for management, and they were maybe given $105,000. And then the year after that, $110,000, all for new professors. So by the time that I'm actually 8-10 years into this organization, I might still be stuck at $100,000 or maybe 2% increase, like $102,000 the next year because of cost of living increase. But I will still be at a lower salary level than somebody who's just joining the organization. This actually happens at MSU also. It happens everywhere, where people who have been in an organization for a really long time, they experience salary compression, such that sometimes they often hire people that are making a lot more money than they are, or the new people coming to the organization are making more money than they are. So that was true for me also. When I first joined MSU, I ended up, because the going rate for a professor was, a certain amount of money at the time, it was I was making a lot more as a new professor than people who had been at MSU for 10, 15 years. And so obviously I can understand from their perspective how they would have thought this is really unfair. Just as I, almost 10 years into MSU now, look at some of the new professors joining and look at their salary and go, wow, that's so much more than what I'm making. And that can make me feel like it's unfair because they're junior to me, right? So essentially, this is saying employees judge how fairly they're being treated